Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining me today. Just making sure you can hear me okay. Okay, so like I said, thank you very much for joining me today. Today, we're going to talk about SEO, specifically the basics of SEO and how you can do SEO on your own website to improve your Google search rankings. And hopefully by following some relatively simple steps and a checklist that I provide you at the end of this webinar, you'll be able to also see some results from your SEO efforts. Now, like I said, so this is a 1-hour webinar. So what I try and do in this webinar is provide you with as much of the basic information that you need to really make a difference. So the problem there is that I don't want to tell you half of what you need to know. I'm trying to tell you all of what you need to know, but in an hour. So we don't have a very, it's basically, essentially, it's a brain dump. So what I think you should probably do, this would be my recommendation, is to listen along, follow what I'm trying to say. Hopefully you can do that. I do try and demystify all this jargon and that sort of thing. And at the end, I provide you some links that you can go to, and some of those links include a checklist, so you can go through what I'm suggesting today, but one point at a time. So it's all about making small incremental or small steps, baby steps, rather than one huge leap into the unknown. And if you can just do one little thing, maybe not even every day, every couple of days, once a week, whatever you can put an effort into, then you will see some results, hopefully. So yeah, so do bear with me. I am trying to show you a lot of information in one go, but that's the whole idea, is that so you have some knowledge and you can then follow a checklist, or alternatively, if you are using a provider, you can speak to them knowing what you need to speak to them about. So you've got some knowledge and some, roadmap of where you want to go to. Okay, so this is what I'm going to talk about. And by the way, if you have any questions or you can't hear me or whatever, just maybe chuck a question into the chat section of Zoom, or unmute yourself. I'm happy for anyone just to ask a question if you want to. There's not a lot of you on here, so that's no problem at all. And, I'll answer the questions as we go through. So what we're going to talk about is, where do I start? Really common question. So I'll try and answer that firstly. And then just talking about the SEO basics. So that's site structure and keywords and how to optimize your content. Links are important. And then performance and security and your mobile friendliness. And then we'll talk about some tools you can use. I think they're all free. Most of them are free anyway. And then I'll give you a 12-point action plan at the end, which you can take away and implement on your own site. Now, I also provide my contact details at the end of this, so you're welcome to contact me about SEO. Okay, so before we get into the detail, let's just talk about what is SEO, because people have different interpretations of it. But it stands for search engine optimization, and it's about helping a piece of content or your website rank higher on Google or in Bing or other search engines. Essentially, there are only two search engines. There's Google or there's Bing. Most of the other ones will use, like Yahoo, for example, uses Google search results. And it's like an 80-20 rule. So 80% of your searches are going to come from Google normally, and maybe 20% or less from Bing. So Bing is still important. Now, improving your SEO, which is what we're talking about today, is about optimizing your underlying natural keyword usage within your content. So it's about developing natural quality content that hopefully will include the words in that content that people will be searching for. So Google can do a match between the search term and your website. But there are other things you need to do too, and they're mostly technical issues around speed, security, but also things like social links or social signals, as Google calls them. But everything you can do with SEO is free. If you can do it yourself, it's free. You don't have to pay for any, high paid SEO person to do it for you. You can definitely do it all yourself. And one of the best arguments for doing it yourself is because most of it is about writing about your business and your products and your services, and no one knows them better than yourself. So it's really about, if you were to write a brochure about your own products and services, then this is sort of what you're doing. Not saying you're doing a brochure, but the same sort of content applies. Okay, so described what SEO is. Now let's just look at a Google search page to see how that's sort of structured. So we've also seen this before. I did a quick search for lawyer Adelaide, and it came up with this result. So the first one is an advertisement. So they've paid Google to rank for that search term. The middle section here is really Google My Business, Google Reviews, Google Maps. So it's your local results. And then you're talking about the SEO. So this section below, there's usually about 10 results, as well as other sections like people also ask, and that's your SEO results. So the idea here is to do SEO, to do the local search, local SEO like Google My Business. And then, you know, if you can, every now and then, or consistently, do some Google advertising as well, search advertising. It's all related. So this whole page is related to what people are searching for. So their intent, you know, so they're a qualified prospect, if you like, for your business, since they're already looking for that business or that service. So you can really get a big impact out of not just doing SEO, but also Google My Business, which really you could categorize possibly as part of SEO, but also looking at search advertising as well with Google. Okay, so that's, I mean, we all know what a Google search page looks like, but I just thought I'd go through those results with you. So this is the common question I get asked: where do I start? You know, I'm not ranking, my page isn't ranking, so what do I do? So the first thing you need to do is to identify what SEO issues you might have. And thankfully, it's pretty easy to do that because there's quite a few SEO audit tools out there. So these are tools, bits of software that will go out, analyze your website and give you some feedback. Some of them are better than others. Some of them are expensive and are used by professionals, and others are free. So we'll talk about some of those. So there's 4 here that I want to sort of bring to your attention. This is one called SEO Review Tools, SEO Review Tools. And they have this tool within, because they have lots of different tools you can use. One of them is a website SEO checker. Now, just be careful not to look for website SEO checker, because I just had a client that I'd recommended this to, and they searched for website SEO checker, and there is another SEO tool that's called that, and nowhere near as good. So it's SEO Review Tools, and we'll look at that in a bit more detail in a sec. There's also one by HubSpot. HubSpot's quite a big organization. They have one called Website Grader. It's not so effective because a good tool like this must take into account the search term, so the keyword you want to rank for. This one doesn't do that, so it's sort of quite superficial. There's this one I found recently called SEO Ability. So there's always new tools coming and going. SEO Ability seems to be quite a good comprehensive tool. You can see the logo down the bottom there if you want to know how to spell that. I think you do need to have an account. Virtually with all of these, you need an account, but it's definitely worthwhile having one of these. And then there's the professional tools. So if you ask someone to go out and do your SEO for you, the first thing they're going to do is an SEO audit on a tool like this. This is SEMrush. There's also Moz. There's a bunch of other ones out there. And these ones do a really comprehensive, detailed look into all aspects of your SEO, your social, your links, a range of different areas. But if you do sign up for one of these, they'll still give you one free audit. So it might be worthwhile doing that anyway. Okay, so that's just a sample of some of the tools out there. I'm just going to show you one of them now. So this is a typical SEO audit tool, and it will ask for, website SEO checker. It will ask for your URL. So just to make sure you get the one off your browser, put in the keyword you want to search for, and go and perform a check, and it'll go off and analyze your website. So, this one takes a couple of minutes to go off and do that. Others take a bit longer. I've shortened this a little bit here, and they all come back with something like this. So it'll give you a score out of 100, and then a sort of a checklist of errors and warnings, improvements you can make, and also things you're doing well. So 56 out of 100, it's neither good nor bad really, because even the largest organizations will get scores like that. So here's some things they need to improve. The number of links to the website needs to be increased. H1 heading on the web page, the title tag's too long, keyword isn't used in the title tag, meta description is too long, a couple of other things there. But really from outside looking in, you might think I don't understand what they're talking about. It's all jargon. So that's what I'll show you today, is that it is jargon, because it's really quite simple ways to fix some of those things. So we'll talk on what they all mean. Now, these tools also provide you with a range of other interesting things, like how often that keyword is being searched for. And this is title tag. So the title tag basically is what comes up in a search result, and the meta description is the little paragraph under that. They're just a little bit too long, small errors, and the word count on your page, which is important, and how many links on the page. So quite useful information. Okay, so I just want to show you just a couple of other ones, just screenshots more than anything. So this is the other one I spoke about. This is Website Grader by HubSpot. I just happened to do one here on JB Hi-Fi. They got a score of 69 out of 100, and it shows them areas where they're doing well and where they're not doing so well. So performance, not so good, mobile, not so good, and security, not so good. The two reds, the two in red are red because they're probably more higher priority than the performance one. So you get little results or reports like this that are telling you where you're good and where you aren't good. So the whole reason for telling you this is to show you that, it's relatively easy to understand where your problem areas lie. And then I'll show you shortly how you can maybe address some of those. Another tool you should probably use is Google Analytics. So many customers that I talk to already have Google Analytics set up on their site, and it's great for that. But a lot of people don't use it very often, and it can be used for a number of different things. So I'm just going to show you some things that you could use it for. So firstly, just to understand who your visitors are. On the Google Analytics homepage, it'll give you this dashboard, which shows you a range of different things. So this is, for example, how many users are coming to your site over a given period, which you can change to a longer time frame. So the number of users, the revenue that's generated from those users, the conversion rate, number of sessions, all important things. You can see how many active users there are on your website right there and then, and what pages they're accessing. They'll also provide you a little snippet of information that might be useful to you. So that sort of varies all the time. What country they're coming from and what time of the day they come to your website, and where they're coming from. So are they coming from social or from search? Is it organic search or paid search, or is it direct to your website by typing in your domain? Or you can tunnel down more, and is it coming from Facebook or Google paid ads or Google SEO, for example? And very useful information, because I'll show you a little bit more shortly why that's useful. Also, what device they're coming on to your website with. So this one's 82% mobile, which is important from a mobile friendliness perspective. So that's one thing. So understanding who your audience are, and we will just have a look at a bit more of this, because you can break it down further by looking at demographics, interests, and a range of other things. So in this particular case, we want to look at their age demographic, and it breaks down the age demographic based on the various metrics. So, the bounce rate, how many sessions they had, how many users there were by demographic. So that might be quite important, because you might notice that one demographic has a higher bounce rate than others. For example, in this particular case, the 35 to 44-year-olds had a higher bounce rate. So that might just tell you something about where your problem lies. But let's just look further. So there is something else I want to show you, and that is to be able to show you the behavior of your users on your website. So you can look at, we'll just find it here, the flow, how users flow through your website, what pages they land on and what pages they go to after that, the second and third interaction on your website. So this is quite useful in understanding what types of users do what. Now, this is a screen recording, so I'm just going to stop this for a second. And I just want to bring your attention to this red part here. So this red part, for example, is how many users they're losing. So this is the landing page, the starting page. So just to give you an idea, nearly 5,000 sessions were commenced on this page, these starting pages, but 2,500 of them almost, so half of them, dropped off. Drop-offs are often things like bounce rates. A bounce is when someone comes to your website and then goes immediately without doing anything. They leave your website. So that should ring an alarm bell. You know, some people just suddenly get distracted. They have to cook dinner or whatever they're doing. But for other reasons, especially if it's a high bounce rate, it might be something along the lines of performance related. So it might be very, very slow, or it might not be very good on a mobile screen, for example. So you might want to just check that out. Now I'm just going to start that again, because this particular one here I want to show you is behavior flow. So a little bit different from the one before in that was based on users. This is based on where they're coming from. And I just want to show you why that's important. If I just stop it here, you can see here we've got users coming from Facebook and users coming from Google, yet they're going to completely different pages. So to bundle all of your users into the one bucket to say, okay, they're all my users coming to my website, treat them all the same, is probably the wrong thing to do. So you need to think about users from that perspective, you know, their demographics, their lifestyle, whatever. And this is where personas become useful, but also where they're coming from. So in this particular case, Google users are landing on the homepage much more often than Facebook users. In fact, Facebook users aren't even landing on the homepage. They're going straight to the collections. And that's most likely because of search versus posting. If you're posting on Facebook, you might do a post on a collection, for example, or a product category or a product. Whereas with Google, you're likely to be found through people searching for you, hence the homepage being found. Okay, so I'm just going to flick on from there. So that's Google Analytics in terms of seeing how users access your website, flow through your website. But you can also see from Google Analytics like this, for example, these 4 columns here. So this is the average time people spend on a page, the pages they're landing on, the bounce rate, and the exit rate. So I'll just quickly show you why that's important. So for example, this particular website has a very low bounce rate of 2%. So they're losing 2 out of every 100 visitors are landing on their site and then just leaving without doing anything. Now, it's not uncommon to see that statistic up in the 40, 50, even 60. I've seen 80% of people bouncing. So that's 80% of visitors to a website are leaving before they actually engage with the website, look at products, nothing. They're just instantly leaving. So that would definitely sound alarm bells. In this particular case, it's quite low, but you can see a lot of users are bouncing. Well, 10% of their bounces, if I can use that term, are leaving on one particular page here. So that would sort of identify that maybe there's a problem on that page. It might be a little bit slow or not user-friendly. So that would sort of pinpoint an area where you might want to look at. Same with exits. If they're exiting a lot on one page, for example, this particular page here, 15% of people are exiting on that. Why? Well, if you look at that page, that's actually, I can go back, it's a collection page. It's page 4 of a collection. So they've gone right through the collection and got to page 4 and left. So that sort of makes sense. 10% are leaving on the home page. You know, I guess that could be explained too, but generally it's split across all the pages there. Okay, so I won't spend too much time on this, but I think it is important, too much more time on analytics, but it is important to understand this. This is very useful too, because this is it's showing shopper behavior on your website. You can find this on Google Analytics under conversions. Now, conversions are things you need to actually set up. So a conversion would be, you know, buying a product, but it could also be subscribing to your email list, for example. So they're all different types of conversions, but I just want to show you this. So this is an excellent shopping behavior graph. And the most important thing I want to show you is the part down the bottom there. So this graph is actually showing you, of all sessions that accessed this site, there were 3,700. 48% of them did absolutely no shopping at all. So this website, just for your information, is purely an e-commerce, physical products. It's actually a fashion outlet. So you can see it's a lot of visitors, but not one of them actually engaged in product viewing. They didn't go to the shop page or the product page. So 48%. Now, if you go down to the next column, this is, so 1,900 of them viewed products, but 87% of them didn't add a product to their cart. And then the next column is, of the sessions that added to the cart, there were 226. 61% of them then abandoned that. So they left the cart and went and did something else. And then of the 98 that actually went to checkout, 42% of them abandoned checkout. So as you can see here, it's a constant battle to, I guess, to optimize your website in a way that you're minimizing these abandonments or increasing things like shopping activity. Not completely eliminating them, for example, in the checkouts, because you're never going to do that. But if you can reduce them by 1 or 2%, then you're going to be doing a lot better. Okay, so I would definitely recommend, if you get the chance, to have a look at Google Analytics. Now, I'm just going to skip this for now. That's just about keywords. If you do get the chance, have a look at Google Search Console if you don't, and it'll tell you which words, I've just blocked these out, but which words are attracting people to your website. So in this particular one, the top query here was attracting 1,600 clicks to this particular site over the time frame. So the reason why that's important is that you'd probably, you minimize or you reduce the ones that aren't working well, and you sort of leverage off the ones that are doing well. It's not meaning that you're going to duplicate those keywords, but you might use, you could add another word to a keyword to make it a longer key phrase, or you could use an associated word or a synonym. There's a range of different things you could do. But I think that's just something you should know, is what words are attracting people to my website. Okay, so that's the first section. You've gone off and you've done some research on your website to understand where your problems lie and where you need to start optimizing and working on your SEO. So let's talk about the SEO basics, because there's a few things you can do that if you do them well, you will definitely start to see results. So let's talk about some of those. So the first thing is your site structure. Now, site structure is important, and we will talk about it shortly. The site structure is important to be simple and logical. Not so simple in that it's just a flat line. There needs to be some logical structure to the information, and we'll talk about that shortly. Then there's keywords. You need to identify keywords that are matched by people's searches. So if people are searching for something and you've got that on your website, then there's a potential match there. It's pretty simple, really, if you think of it that way. You then need to optimize your content around those keywords. Look at your security and performance. Add some links. and think about your local users, particularly if you are a local focused business. You're trying to attract locals to your site. So let's look at these individually then. So site structure. Why is that important? Well, it's important because what it does is it gives you, as the website owner, as the SEO content developer, a structure around which you, or context, if you like, around which you can structure your content. So silos around which you can then develop pages and subpages, topics and keywords. So you might group keywords under a particular topic, for example. So that's important because it allows you to then understand how the website will be structured and what content you need to develop. Site structure also, gives your higher pages in your hierarchy a much better chance of ranking. So for example, like I showed you in the analytics before, home pages are more likely to rank, and maybe just the next hierarchy down, because all the pages below them provide them authority. So for example, I'll just give you an example here with a diagram. So if you think of this as a typical network layout, this is a PC computer website. These particular pages here, their links and their content provide authority. I'll explain authority in a second, to the page above that. And likewise, those pages provide authority and content and links to the pages above that. And that goes all the way up to the home page. So the page on this particular website that has the most authority is the home page, because it understands information about desktop computers, it understands information, or it has links to information about laptop computers. Authority is important in SEO, and it gets back to links both internally and externally. It's like a popularity contest. And if there are two, now I'm talking here about internal links, but if you're thinking about external links, if there were two web pages the same in every other way, other than one website has lots of links to authoritative websites and one doesn't, then Google's going to rank that one higher than the one without the links, considerably higher probably. So we'll talk about external links in a minute, but just at the moment, we're talking about internal links. So this is links from certain pages to other pages, from services, from the home page to the services pages, for example. Now, site structure also makes it easy for Google to crawl your website. You might not know this, but Google has a crawl budget, so it only spends a certain amount of time on every website. So if your website's very complicated and deep sort of structure, it might not have enough time to get to all of your products, for example. So you're sort of missing out on that crawl budget. So ideally, you want it to be relatively flat website and simple sort of structure. And finally, and most importantly, site structure is really easy, makes it easy for your users, your customers, to find information. So that's the first thing. So site structure. Then you need to think about keywords. So keywords are very, very important. According to Google, they're the most basic signal that they use, that information is relevant. So in other words, when someone's searching for something, Google will match that content based on the relevancy of content on your website. So if they were searching for mechanic in Darwin, then if you have mechanic in Darwin on your website or something along those lines, you're likely to get a rank or a match, a search match. So that's fairly important, obviously. So if you could take anything out of today, take anything away today, if you have one goal, it's to do this. It's a bit wordy, I know, but if you can simplify it, it's really to identify and selectively use. I just underline selectively use, because it's not about stuffing keywords in everywhere. It's about using language naturally as you would normally, but with a target keyword phrase that you've identified. So identify and selectively use a target keyword phrase, and you identify that, selectively use that on every page or piece of content. So you would have a keyword phrase for your home page, a keyword phrase for your services page. For each product, you'd have a keyword phrase. even for the About Us page or any blog post or anything like that, you would have a keyword phrase for each of those. And then once you've got those keywords, you start to develop content around those keywords. So, you know, that's titles and descriptions and alt tag descriptions on your images and that sort of thing. Okay, so that's really simplistically what you should be doing. Identifying a keyword, long tail keyword, which we'll talk about shortly, for each piece of content, and then writing content around those keywords. So the first thing you need to do to identify what those keywords are is to do some keyword research. And there's 3 things to look for when you're looking for keywords that you want to rank for. So the first thing is, how often are people searching for that? You don't want to use a keyword that's never searched for, because, you know, that would be silly, because you would just get no benefit from it in terms of search engines. So you do want something that's going to, or a combination of words that are going to be searched for relatively frequently. This here is from Google's Keyword Planner, by the way, which is part of Google Ads. You can have a Google Ad account, not do any advertising, but it'll give you this sort of information about average monthly searches and competition. So you want the average monthly searches to be, you know, relatively high. Maybe not the highest, but relatively high. Because if you go too high, you start to get very high competition. And you want to have, so you want to have as high a rank as possible with the lowest competition as possible. So the way you do that is to look for certain types of keywords. So this is a simple example, but for example, if you look at the word tomato plant, or it's a phrase. So when I say keyword, I'm actually meaning phrases, multiple keywords together. So if you think of tomato plant, you know, this one here gets 22,000 average monthly searches. So a lot of search volume, but the competition is so high that the conversion rate is low. Now, if you add to that, or use maybe a different keyword phrase like when to plant tomatoes, for example, you'll see the average monthly searches drops right down, but so does the competitiveness. So it becomes easier to convert people, or to get people to click on that, or to get more clicks from that particular search term. But if you go down even further to this orange section, this is what we call the long tail keywords. Lots of keywords, the majority of keywords are in this section here. And that's where you're basically grouping words together to make a phrase. And now in this particular one, okay, it's only getting 390 average monthly searches compared to 22,000, but the competition is really low. So you're much more likely to get a higher conversion rate than you would otherwise, let alone compete, you know, against, depending on your industry, sometimes the big multinationals. So that's why you try and find a longer tail keyword phrase. So if you're thinking of that from a business perspective, you know, so I've got some examples up here. So if you're a builder and you're in Mount Barker, for example, or in a location, then you might use that location in your keyword phrase. You may not, depending on your target audience. And also what sort of builder, in this case, a home builder, it could be a renovations or whatever the case may be. Same with dress, you know, if you are a fashion store, you know, you could use multiple words in a description of a product, for example. In this case, a floral cotton summer maxi dress versus dress, you've got the option or the possibility there of ranking for a whole combination of keywords as opposed to just the one. So it could be ranking for maxi dress or summer dress or cotton summer maxi dress as an example, floral dress. So it just gives you a much better chance of ranking. And likewise, if you're a service, you can do the same thing. So, you know, in this particular case, you can add a feature to your service, maybe a location. So in this case, small business accountant Perth versus just accountant as an example. The other thing is, if you ever do decide to go into Google Ads, these long phrase or long tail phrases or keyword phrases versus just the single word or even two words, it's going to cost you a lot less. You know, I know, for example, lawyer, I think lawyer is the most expensive keyword out there. So I'm sure accountant would be pretty high. So that's another way of reducing any advertising expense down the track. And then, of course, relevance. So, you want to look for keywords that are relevant to your content, rather than trying to attract people for other reasons, because you'll get penalized, I guess would be the right word, from Google. So it needs to be a relevant keyword. So once you've identified these keywords, just to continue on from keyword research. So those are the three things you want to look for. And how do you find those keywords? There's a number of different ways. So a Google search page is a good way to start. You just go to the Google search page and search for your keyword phrase. So in this particular case, I'm using an example here of Brisbane builder, and I've put that in. And this is really just to get some ideas. Now, if you look up there, you'll see that this is called Google Suggest. So Google's already giving you some ideas of what people are searching for. 3-4 letter keyword phrases that you might or might not be able to use. So that's Google Suggest is one thing. And if you scroll down, there's people also ask, which might not give you a keyword phrase, but that might be a keyword you could use in a blog post, for example, because blogs are perfect for questions, answering questions. And then down the bottom here, you get related searches. The reason why related searches are great is because these are actual related searches. People have searched for these, so they're not made up sort of terms. They're things that people have actually searched for in the past. Now, if I click on one of those, you can keep tunneling down and get some ideas from that. So that's just one way, very high level way or simple way of finding some keywords you might want to use. There are a lot of tools out there that you could use. I'll just go through some of them now. So there's Google Search Console is another one I mentioned, probably the best, and Google Keyword Planner, the combination of those two. There's also Ubersuggest, which is a freemium. I think you need an account, and you can get a couple of free uses of that. There's also Keyword Explorer, which is by Moz, and the SEO review tools, which I mentioned earlier for your SEO audit, also have some tools there that might be able to assist you. And then there's also ones like keyword.io, which is another keyword research tool. So definitely recommend doing that. Now I'm just going to quickly, we're running a little bit behind here, so I'm just going to push along here. This is Keyword Explorer by Moz. Moz, this is a professional tool. So I just signed up they have a 30-day free account, free trial. So I signed up, and you basically put in some keywords that you want to look for. So I've put in home furnishing Sydney, and I've changed it to Australia, and I've gone off and analyzed that, and it came back with some information. So some monthly volumes, difficulty of ranking for that particular keyword, and a range of other things like keyword suggestions. So definitely would recommend at least having a look at this, maybe signing up for a 30-day free account. But there are some suggestions there, and it'll give you additional suggestions, but also things like relevancy and the monthly volume for each of those. Now, so there are these tools out there, but I would recommend using Google's Keyword Planner. It's free, and it's part of Google Ads. You just need a Google Ad account, which you should probably sign up to anyway. And then there's the Keyword Planner there, and then you can discover new keywords, and you can also look for volumes and forecasts, maybe if you're looking for, say, advertising. Now, to discover new keywords, you just click on there and you type the product or service that you want to sort of search for, or the keyword you're looking for. Going back to Brisbane builders here, add a couple more. And then you just make sure you've got the right settings. generally speaking, you just want to make sure you're in Australia, and you can leave all the others. You can also start with the website, but normally just use the keywords, and then you get results. And here you get some really detailed results about volumes for your keywords, how competitive that keyword is. So in other words, how easy it would be to rank. And also it includes costs if you are cost per click. So if you are looking for advertising, it gives you some idea as to how expensive it might be. And you can just keep broadening your search with Google Keyword Planner. So I do recommend having a look at that. Now, just for benefit of time, I'm just going to keep working along here to the next slide. So based on what we've just talked about, so, taking into account the structure of your website and the keywords you want to start to work on, you need to start developing content around those keywords. So here's a really simple way of showing you how that might work. And then shortly, I'll show you in a real world example how you would do that on your own website. But let's just say, for example, you're a mechanic in Darwin, Tom's Mechanical in Darwin, and you want to optimize your homepage. So I've gone off and done some research and decided that car mechanic Darwin is the keyword I want to rank for. So I would use that, like I said, just strategically within the document. So in other words, you would use it maybe in the title of the document, in the URL of the page, in the body text or the description, and in the image description or image alt tag. And that's really it in a simplistic sort of a way. So by doing that and using conversational, English or conversational language, you are then able to tell Google what your site's about and hopefully improve your rankings based on that. Now, a couple of other things I've done here. So I've assumed that if someone's looking for a car mechanic in Darwin, they might also be looking for a roadworthy certificate, or they might also be looking for brake repair, also a bunch of other services. So I would also probably add those in there because they're associated with mechanic. And I would then put a link from those to the service page for those particular services. So this is, remember I spoke about adding links to your site. This is how you would do that. Links are very, very important internally. So you want to have as many of those, maybe up to 10 or so on your home page, just linking to your other pages. Okay, so that's a fairly simplistic way to show you. You don't want to do keyword stuffing where you're putting keywords in everywhere, because that'll be considered spammy by search engines and you'll be penalized by not being ranked, essentially. Okay, so just quickly covering off, so you're you're optimizing this content. So besides the keyword and the structure that we've spoken about, you need to also think about who you're developing the content for, because you may be developing content for different customer types or personas. So you might want to think about developing personas. Some people do that, some people don't. It really depends on your business size, number of different types of customers that you have. So that's where Google Analytics comes into play, where you might have, completely different polar type customers, for example, a man, a woman, mobile, desktop, remote, CBD. There's a range of different ways that they can differ. Sorry, I'm just going to take that off. Also, I spoke about quality, natural content, using proper structure to your content. So using headings, subheadings, and making sure they are actually H1 headings or H2 headings, because then this is telling the search engine how your page is structured, what's important content, what's less important. And then use quality images wherever you can, because, impressions do count, and the quality of your images you use on your website are important. So, I'll talk briefly about that in a second, but to use alt image tags. So I'll also touch on that in a second. Optimize your meta titles and meta descriptions, add some internal tags, and optimize your performance. So let's talk further about some of these. So meta titles and meta descriptions, you've heard this probably a couple of times now. So it's really quite simple. So that's your meta title. That's the heading of a search result, and your meta description is the paragraph underneath that. So the first thing is that you could not even worry about doing this, and to be perfectly honest, it may or may not affect your search results. So the jury's out on that. Essentially, if you don't do this, Google will just, and Bing will take a snippet from your website and use that instead. But what this does is, because you can have your page sitting there online, but you can change the results, how that's displayed in a search result. So for example, cut to the chase here, you could make your meta titles and meta descriptions more, for example, more salesy. So give them a reason to come to your website, you know, add some key sales proposition information on there. So, you know, why is it a great product? Free shipping, is that included, for example? All these things might be a reason for people to click on that link. So it's, once you're ranking, you can then use this to outcompete people that are ranking with you by having a much more compelling meta title and meta description. Now, they both have certain limitations, 60 characters and 165 characters. And if you want to add it to your website, one of the issues is you need to add it to your web page's HTML, to the head code on your section on your web page. Now, for your average punter, that's just going to be too difficult to do. So luckily, if you're with any of the leading website platforms, say WordPress or Shopify or Wix or Weebly, Squarespace, they all enable you to do this without having to go into this part of your website. So I've got a few examples here. I haven't covered them all, but they all do provide this. Sorry, and I'm not sure what website platforms you're all on. This particular one I'm showing you here is Wix. And this one here will give you, under the page settings section, you have a SEO Google section as well as an advanced SEO section here. But under this SEO Google, this is where you put your meta title, your meta description, and if you want to change the URL, that's where you would do that. Now, the reason why you might want to change your URL is if the keyword is in your URL, it's a fairly powerful way of improving your SEO rankings. Even changing your home page away from calling it home, because home isn't benefiting anyone. You can have home on your navigation, that's no problem at all, because you can name your navigation differently to what you name your actual page. So, you know, if your home page is, you know, in this particular case, it might be Charlotte McCoy photography, she could also add wedding photography to that as well, for example. Might not be a good example, but you can use the URL in your home page, in your URL. This is WordPress. So WordPress is one of the few platforms where you're probably better off using a plugin. If you are a WordPress user, you probably know what I mean by a plugin. Little app that you download and install. Yoast is the one that's most often used. It's a fantastic plugin. Gives you it forces you to sort of be a little bit disciplined with your keywords, but you can edit edit the snippet. So this is what would show up in your search results. But yeah, so that's Yoast. And this one's Shopify, for example. So at the bottom of any page or collection or product in Shopify, you'll have this little edit website SEO section. And this is where you can change the meta title and the meta description. And most of them will tell you if you've exceeded the number of characters. This one here, you can see it's got a ... Normally they prefer you to stay within but it doesn't really matter. In fact, you could even leave the ... there if you want some sort of suspense. You make them come to your website to find out, you know, the rest of the story, for example. So that's your meta title and meta description. It's relatively easy to do. And it's really a summary of that particular page, for example, or product, but it also gives you a chance to modify it slightly to make it more salesy. So I'll just show you how you might be able to do that. So often meta titles and meta descriptions use this format. So they use words separated by spaces, by spacers. So spaces would be that vertical line there or a dash. So often they'll use primary keyword dash secondary keyword dash brand name, or keyword dash or horizontal line, vertical line, location line, business name. So to show you how that might work, this business here is Jessica's yoga studio. Sorry, it's a bit blurry there. So her meta title is private yoga classes space New York City space Jessica's yoga studio. And that's how it would show up on her meta title. And she can also summarize or edit the description as well. But that could equally be anything to suit your particular product. They all have to be unique for each page, but it could be Nike shoes, dash men's and women's, dash free shipping, for example. So that's your meta title and meta descriptions. Your meta titles. Meta descriptions, really it's a short summary of your product or service or your brand. And just a couple of things to remember, try and use the keyword in that, keep it to 160 characters, and think of it from a user's perspective. So why should they come to your site? Now, adding alt image tags. So alt image tags, if you don't know, are a description of your image. So if you have an image on your website, if you're a visually impaired person and you're using a reading tool, for example, when those reading tools come to an image, it will read the description on your alt text to describe to the visually impaired person what your image is about. So even just from an accessibility point of view, you should use that because it is providing a service to visually impaired people. But over and above that, Google also use it because Google also can't look at pictures. Google can only read bits and bytes essentially. So if you can describe what the picture is about using your keyword, it just adds to the overall picture that Google can build about your particular product, service, page, brand. So a double benefit there. So it is something that you should probably look at doing. Try and do it when you add the product, because otherwise it becomes you end up having a whole bunch of products you need to add the meta titles, alt text description to. By the way, that one there, that is WordPress. So WordPress, wherever you edit the website, will enable you to add an alt text, edit the image, sorry. You can add an alt image text to that. This particular one here is Shopify, so the same thing. Wherever you edit the image, you'll be able to add the alt image text. And once again, I've shown the same three examples, but they're pretty much the same across most platforms. In this particular case, under image settings, it's basically saying, tell Google what this image is about. So that's what you would do there. Remember to use your keyword in there. And all I'm saying here is try and be a bit descriptive too. So rather than just man on escalator, you might say man wearing backpack walking down escalator. It just gives Google a bit more to work with. Okay, and you need to do that on every image as well. Now, links. Adding links to your site, they are important. There are two types. There are internal links, which I've mentioned, and that would be something like a service that you're referring to, linking to, or a product. So, you need to have quite a few of those. I'm just going to skip through these. This is just talking about how it adds the authority to the page above it. So that is very, very important. I think I've touched on that enough already. And then external links. So this is links from external websites to your website. This is more important in a way than the internal links. So this is, you should have some of these already. So your Facebook page, if you have one, should be linking to your website. Any of your socials, Google My Business, they should all be linking to your website. So there's some initial ones. But ideally, if you say, are a manufacturer and you belong to a number of different manufacturing associations or organizations, industry bodies, for example, you might have links from them. If you're a supplier of a particular product, you might ask that company if they can add a link to their site, linking to you. Guest blogging is another way to do that. Sorry, I've just noticed there's a question here. Are you actually use Wix? That's great. So hopefully I'm showing you some examples here of sites that you are using. If I haven't by any chance, just welcome to ask me after this how you would do it on your particular platform. Anyway, I'm just on links. So this is something you need to focus on ongoing. It's something you should always be focusing on. If you meet someone that has a similar website, should be in your industry, then you should ask them if you can exchange links, or or maybe do a guest blog post, for example, where they're talking about their particular product or service on your website and linking to their site. Now, external links can include a number of different types of organizations. Like I said, industry sites, authoritative sites, blogs, Facebook, so other socials, business directories, and citation sites. So, for example, there are a bunch of citation sites out there that I'll talk to you about shortly, where you can do that very, very easily. And these are things like Yellow Pages on local search and all those ones. So I definitely recommend getting on those, particularly, but not only, but particularly if you are a local, your market is local to you. Now, you don't want any links because some of them can be considered toxic, and you'll eventually need to remove those. So definitely just be careful on who you link to. So just as an example, you should maybe have 25 external sites linking to your homepage, plus 25 plus. So here are some of those citation sites I talk about. So now some of them sound a bit dubious, but they're not. These are all credible businesses that basically do this to provide two things. One is a service to people trying to find businesses, and two, to provide an SEO service for businesses like yours. So I have a link after this website where you can actually go to most of these and just submit your site. But you will need to provide things like address, your phone number, maybe an ABN, but it's well worth it. It'll just do a couple a day. But Hot Frog, Aussie Web, True Local, Yelp. So Yelp is enormous in the US. Over here, they're just sort of getting off the ground, but still definitely big. Local Business Guide, whole bunch of them there. So this is word of mouth online, local search, Yellow Pages. So definitely recommend you doing that. That will definitely help with your links. So look, I'm very sorry, but we're running a little bit out of time. So I'm just going to quickly run through this. I just want to show you how you can optimize your content. Now, this particular one is Shopify. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. So I've gone to here and I've chosen a particular product. Now I'm lucky in a way that this product already has some content. I'm just optimizing it. So this is a women's top. It's called Batwing top. Now in this particular case, the customer wants the SC12 to stay there. I've just gone off, by the way, and I'm going to paste. So instead of just Batwing top, I've gone and looked for a keyword, done that research, and identified women's cotton Batwing top 3/4 sleeve as my keyword phrase. So I've put that there in the title. Now I've got all this content here, this description, and it's pretty good. It has all the information I need. It just isn't very salesy, and it doesn't roll off the tongue, doesn't read very well. So I'm going to optimize that a little bit here. So I've gone off and done that work. I'm not going to delete it all. I'm just going to paste some description there. So now I've got a much more readable description here. This soft and comfortable top is perfect for breezy days, blah, 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 blah. It's not ideal yet, but I'm going to delete some of this that I don't need anymore because it's in the content. Now this is bad. So this is basically saying it's an upsell, cross-sell situation, but there's no product description. So SC03 doesn't say much, and there's no link as such. So I'm going to just do a quick, short, really short solution here by maybe just describing these. Ideally, what I would do is go to all those products, optimize them first, and then come back and provide a link to them. But instead, I'm just going to say pair with our super cotton, or I think it's actually Badara, I spelled that wrong, pants or shorts, and then I can provide links to each of these here. Now I'm just going to go to the next slide here. So we've done all of that. Now what I want to do is take that keyword phrase up the top there. I haven't quite finished optimizing the description. I'm just going to take the keyword, copy that, and I'm just going to put it in the description here. Instead of top, I've put woman's cotton batwing top, and I'm going to bolden that to make the search engines know that it's important. Now I'm going to just copy that. I could just copy the small section, but I'm going to copy the whole thing. Sorry, just going, it's a bit cumbersome, these slides here. Let's copy those that whole thing. Go down to the images. And in this particular case, the alt image tag text is right there. And I'm just going to paste that in. So the jury's sort of still out about whether on each page, whether each image needs to have a separate description. And I don't think it really does, although Google haven't answered that question. So I think just to play safe, what you do is probably, if you can, try and get, like in this one, I'm just adding back to the end of it. So just to make it slightly different keyword tag description to the others. So this one, just add side view or something like that, you know, side. So anyway, so you'd need to do that for each of your images. You then want to make sure that you're in the right categories or collections and they're tagged with the right tags, but collections as Shopify call them. Now I'm just going to go down to the bottom just to show you the snippet. So there's the snippet, that's the search engine preview, and I can go in here and edit that slightly. So I could make that more salesy. I can maybe edit a bit of that that's not showing up in the description there. And if I need to down the bottom, I can also add the keyword to the URL. So other than that, the only part I sort of flicked over here was adding some links here, which I seem to have just missed that off my presentation. Yeah, because that's a different one. So I'm just going to keep going. If you need to go, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm just going to keep going. Now, you do need to do the same on your product category. So I'm just going to show you how you might do that here. So I'm just going to, in this particular, on this side, I'm going to collections, which is a product category terminology in Shopify. And I'm just going to search for a collection here. In this particular case, I'll choose dresses and skirts. So slightly different. Here I have an image and a title and nothing else. So the same applies. I've gone off, done a quick bit of research on a keyword, and I've decided cotton and linen dresses and skirts made in Australia is my keyword phrase. So I'm going to delete that dresses and skirts. I need to write content then around that. So I've gone off and done that, and just going to paste that here. Now, I didn't have time to do a lot. So this is the one problem here, is that I haven't done enough words. And two things, I haven't done enough words. And ideally, you'd probably want to have some links to maybe categories or specific products in there as well. Now, I'm just trying to make this, it doesn't read very well, so I'm just fixing that up. So I'm adding the keyword in here. I'm adding a dash, so I can just remove that comma. But you'd also do the same. You'd grab that keyword and put it into the alt image tag of your collection image. So as simple as that. So like I said, two things I didn't do there was the description just isn't long enough, but I'm also a strong believer in something is better than nothing. So that is definitely better than what it was before, but ideally you would probably want to just do a longer description and try and have some links in there. Now, I'm just going to flick through these next ones. So this is Google Search Console. The reason I think it's really important is whenever I've changed anything, so I've optimized my SEO, I've added a new product, added a new page, I go to Google Search Console and I go to URL inspection and I enter the URL in there and I ask Google to go and look at that URL. It'll come back saying one of two things. We're aware of this page and we've indexed it. Would you like us to index it now for you? And you can say yes. Or it will say, we're not aware of this page. Would you like us to index it? And you say yes. So either way, you're getting your page instantly sort of indexed by Google. They're crawling your page sort of straight away, as opposed to waiting for them to come to your page. It's particularly good for products or blog posts where you want to get, or an event, for example, you want to tell people about it straight away. So just some things now you need to think about. So I'll only take 5 minutes if you can bear with me. So you need to optimize your site for mobile because most of your users are going to be coming in on mobile now. So it's more about just the way it looks. You know, you don't want tiny buttons and tiny fonts, tiny pictures, but it's also about performance, and we'll talk about that. So first thing is, if you are designing your own website, is to try and design it in mobile view mode sometimes. So a lot of website builders will have this option to view from a desktop or view from a mobile, just to see if it's looking good on both versions. And then when you are on a mobile, designing for mobile, make sure you're designing for fat fingers, essentially, because, you know, you've got to make the tap targets people are touching with their fingers accessible and, you know, not sort of overlapping another button. And also the fonts need to be easy to read and that sort of thing. Try not to use pop-ups on your mobile because it's annoying, it slows it down, and sometimes it's difficult to get rid of them. So most pop-up makers will allow you to turn it off on mobiles. And then you need to optimize your images on something that's going to enable you to compress your image. So I'll talk about that in a second, but there is this mobile friendly test you can do with Google. That's just going to show you how friendly it is from a visual perspective, not necessarily from a performance perspective. Now, performance is important, so is security, because they're also ranking factors. So Google do take them into account when they're ranking your site. So there's two things you need to think, well, two areas. Security, if you're on a platform like Wix or Shopify, for example, they provide a lot of this security for you. If you're on a WordPress site, they don't always. So depending on your hosting provider and that sort of thing, it will depend on you sometimes to go off and get that. But you do need to have an SSL certificate, and some people will often show trust seals. Now, these don't necessarily do anything because anyone can replicate these, but you know, I think psychologically they do provide a level of comfort. But performance is also important. So performance, one thing you need to be aware of here, is not many people aware of this, is that when you access your website all the time, it's cached on your browser. So it's going to seem very, very fast to you all the time. Whereas a new user, and particularly on a mobile, if they've never accessed your website, it might be super duper slow and you're not aware of that. So that's one of the reasons you might get high bounce rates, for example. And often mobile performance just gets down to images are too big. So you need to think about, well, firstly, try to measure if it is slow or not, and then think about how you can maybe compress some of those images. Now there's lots of tools out there. There's TinyJPEG or tinypng.com is one tool. There's bulk image resizer I was trying the other day, which is a pretty good tool as well. So, you know, you just drag your images across to there and then download them. So it's not making them smaller in terms of dimensions, but smaller in terms of their weight. So they are faster to load on people's browsers. And also, if you do want to get an objective view of your website performance, try using gtmetrics.com. Open an account there, and then they allow you to choose where you want your user to be, because the default is Canada. And if you sign up, you can choose Sydney. It's the only location in Australia, but you can choose Sydney and also the type of network they're on, whether it's a mobile or a slow broadband or fast broadband connection. It just gives you a bit of a feel. So people are often surprised to get an F for fail, which is what GTmetrix will give you if you're slow performing. So it's not something to necessarily get alarmed about, but it is something to sort of fix as soon as you can. So this is an example of tiny JPEG, but I'm just going to skip past this for now if you don't mind. There's also, just in terms of Google My Business and local SEO, I would definitely recommend doing this if you're not on Google Your Business. One quick way to find out if you are is to do a search for your business. And when this comes up, if it does, is to click on Own This Business, ? And that'll either enable you to verify your business or will tell you that it's already been verified. And if it is verified, then you need to start optimizing that, adding products, posts and that sort of thing. And that will help you show up in those local results I showed you earlier. So definitely recommend, if you're not doing that, to do that straight away and to start using things like Google reviews, because Google reviews will be used by Google to give it an insight into how popular or not your products are. And then those local citation sites I mentioned before, definitely recommend doing those. And just blogs, definitely look at doing blogs. I'm just going to skip by this. Blogs are a super good way of ranking for different types of content, particularly lists or questions. So I usually show this example here where every single post, this is about handbags, but every single post on this particular page is a blog. So it does rank very, very well sometimes. Now I'm just going to show you some tools you can use. In fact, I'm just going to skip through these because they're all in the links I provide you afterwards. I've gone through most of them already. I didn't go through that one. It's an eCommerce audit tool, Think with Google. If you search Think with Google, and you have to go to the US site, or Grow My Store is actually what it's called. If you go to search for Grow My Store, one word, you'll be taken to that site. Keyword Planner by Google. Now, if you are hitting a writer's block and you can't think of anything to write, there are some really cool tools out there. This one here is writer.me, and it just enables you to, I don't necessarily recommend using them all the time, but just gives you some, just removes the writer's block. And just some other things I've already just mentioned there. Okay, so this is the action plan I talk about. So I've gone through most of it already. So start off by doing an SEO audit using one of those tools, so you understand where you stand, and then maybe doing a bit of keyword research with Google's Keyword Planner. So I've identified some keywords for individual pages. That's the way I would probably do it. Yeah, and so a product is also a page, but that's the way I would do it. Then get your structure right. Make sure you don't have a piece of content out there that doesn't belong there, or a page off on its own. And make sure your navigation reflects that. So your navigation's all following the same structure as your content structure, and then start to write some content for it, for each of those keywords, pages, products. Do the meta titles and descriptions while you're doing that. And think about your mobile version. So you can do this SEO stuff, but if the performance is no good on mobile, or it just looks too terrible on mobile, then you're sort of wasting your time doing all of that. So you need to also look at fixing those things. Compress large images, alt image tags, add some internal links. If you can, try and identify 3 authoritative links from outside your organization that can link to you. Submit your site to some of those citation sites I mentioned. Set up Google My Business and some social pages, and integrate them. So have some link, Facebook like pages and share, and like buttons and share buttons, and maybe feeds within your website, for example, or follow icons. and set up Google Search Console and Analytics. And then I would, if you can, try and do this last one, which is identify a long tail keyword phrase and write a blog once a week if you can about that particular topic. Now, if you do want more information, I do recommend highly Google have this digital garage service. It's fantastic service targeting people like yourself who may not, have all the technical skills, but have their own business they want to run and be successful. So definitely recommend that. And that's basically it. Sorry, I'm late. I'm not sure. It doesn't usually take me this long, so I must have added a few extra words in this time. There's a link there if you can go to that link. I can't copy it right at the moment because I'm in share screen mode, but I might unshare it in a second and I'll post it onto the chat here. I need to improve my website at the moment. I only have one page. Okay, so one page isn't, I'll just read out the question so everyone gets the question. I need to improve my website. At the moment, I only have one page. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Depends on your product or service, but one-page websites are quite popular. But the same thing applies. So you need to still do your SEO for that particular page. The benefit of having products and services on their own page is that you can really focus SEO. If you think about the keywords and you've got a mixture of different products and services, it becomes quite difficult to identify a phrase that's going to describe your business, if you like. But there's nothing wrong necessarily with having one page. You just need to make sure it's structured properly. So normally you'd have a big header, something about, why your business is unique or good or why they need to continue, maybe some products, your top sellers or your featured products or your categories, for example. Maybe a subscribe to our email list if you're doing email marketing, maybe a social feed, and then your footer, just something like that. You can also highlight individual products. You have a whole section just on one product with a call out on one side and an image as a background. So yeah, hopefully that all helped. Now, I'm just going to show you. So I'm not sure if you're all part of this program here, but if you aren't, definitely recommend the Digital Solutions Program. You can find information about it at businessstation.com.au. So I definitely would recommend that if you aren't on that program. Now, if you want to contact me, you're welcome to ricky@businessstation.com.au. I'll try and answer any questions you have. Now, I'm just going to unshare this if I can. Stop sharing so I can just get that link and post it to you. So just bear with me. There you go. I've just posted the link into the chat section. So hopefully you should be able to receive that. Otherwise, just send me an email or, contact me and I'll be able to hopefully help you out. I really hope that was of some benefit to you guys. And, like I said, there's a lot of resources in that little folder there. It's just resources I found on the website myself from various organizations. So it's nothing that we've put together ourselves, but thank you for joining me and good luck with your business. Please, if you have any other questions, please send me an email. I do love SEO, so it is a bit of a passion of mine. Be happy to help you out. Okay, thanks everyone. You have a good day now.